Hi, Algebra friends. Welcome to your massive Chapter 5 Summative Study Review video, or whatever you want to call it. Essentially, it's going to be like 100 minutes of me going through all of the skills that you're going to see on your summative assessment. It will take a bit of time. However, it will be a perfect review getting you ready for your assessment. Please also ignore my yellow hearts. I was just listening to that song and got inspired. I'm just kidding. I had to test out my pen. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about what will be on your summative assessment. So this video will go through at least one of every skill that you see here. So the first skill that you're going to have to look at is how to identify what type of slope, positive, negative, zero, or undefined, when given an equation. You will have to graph a line when it's in slope-intercept form, point-slope form, and standard form. You will need to look at a graph and be able to derive an equation and write it in slope-intercept and point-slope. You will have to be able to convert between all three linear function forms. So whether we give it to you in point-slope, you need to put it in standard slope-intercept. Or if we give it to you in slope-intercept, you need to put it in the other two. Lastly, probably the easiest part will be graphing absolute value functions and describing their translations. So buckle up, here we go. If you have questions about any of these skills, you better ask because this will be on your summative. Okay, here we go. So the first skill is looking at the different types of slope. Now, hopefully this is kind of review, but if you've got a line that's going upwards, when you look at it from left to right, that would be positive. So for example, if you've got an equation like y equals 2x, that would be a positive slope. A negative slope is going downwards when looking at it from left to right. Y equals negative 2x. A zero slope is a horizontal line. Now remember, if you're looking at an equation and it's a horizontal line, that's what it would look like. Or like y equals 7, or like y equals 10. Your vertical lines, those are the ones that are undefined, and the only vertical equations look like this. So if you see a y equals, that will always be horizontal, which has a zero slope. If you see an x equals, that's always a vertical line, which will be undefined. Now, let me show you quickly, and this should look pretty familiar to you when you look at your summative. All right, looking at your equation, you've got y equals negative x plus 3. All right, well, I know that my slope here is negative 1. Wow, that's a negative slope. Looking at this in point slope form, here is where your m is, and now, granted, it's 4/5 as a fraction, but that's positive. Okay, x equals 11. If you were to graph that, that's going to be a vertical line. Vertical tells you, hello, that's undefined. I don't know when you look at this video if you'll be able to see that because of my video. Okay, ignore me. So if you see an x equals, that is a vertical line, which is undefined. Y equals will be horizontal, and we know that that's going to be a zero slope. Back to our comfort zone, slope intercept. When you see 5x, hey, guess what? 5 is positive. Yay. And lastly, here is your slope value, this m, which is negative 5. If you say it out loud in your head, hello, that's a negative slope. So believe it or not, that's actually the first part of your assessment, is just looking at a series of equations telling me positive, negative, zero, or undefined. Okay, skill number 2, let's get into some graphing. We shall start easy with some slope-intercept form. Now, I make my humans always identify your m and b first. So the m, negative 4/3, and your b is a negative 1. Now remember, we always start by plotting our y-intercept right here at negative 1. Done. Now, to apply your slope, that tells you how you're going to move on your coordinate plane. So this is a negative 4/3. We're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3. And you're going to, pretend like that went through. Oh my gosh. Okay, if you didn't know, I'm writing with like a trackpad right now. So when I was in remote learning, I was like a pro at this, but now I just taking L's on the daily. Okay, that's not gonna happen. All right, so that is slope intercept. You always start by plotting your y-intercept first, and then you apply your slope. Moving on. Now with point slope, it's not too bad. It just kind of looks like a hot mess when you're looking at it. The first thing that you want to do is say, all right, What is my slope value? Well, guess what? It's 3, which we know we can write as 3 over 1. Now you have to be careful here. We need to identify a coordinate pair. So for my x value, first of all, when you see that plus and it's in point slope form, you know that's the opposite. It's actually negative. So when you see the plus in point slope, no, you know that's going to be the opposite. It's going to be negative. And then your y coordinate is just going to be 2. So the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to plot this coordinate pair at negative 1, 2, 3, 4, up 2. All right. We plotted our point. Now let's apply our slope of 3. So starting here, we go up 1, 2, 3 over 1. Well, we could do it again. 1, 2, 3 over 1. Oh, gosh. Okay, again, pretend like that actually went through the points. Oh my gosh. So just a quick recap. When you're looking at point slope form, your slope, your m value, is always right here outside of your parentheses. So that tells you how you're going to move. Your coordinate pair is going to come from these 2 points here. Now remember, if you see the plus sign, it's really negative. Okay, so we have graphed in slope-intercept, point-slope. Now let's go to standard. Now, Mrs. Leban's favorite trick here is just to use the cover-up method to figure out what our x and y intercepts would be. So please don't mind me. I should have done this before the video, but here we are. Okay, hold on. Beep, 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 beep. All right, let's find our x-intercept first. So we shall cover up this guy. If I've got negative 4x equals 12, I know that my x-intercept is going to be negative 3. Okay, because if you divide both sides by negative 4, it gives you negative 3. I'm going to go plot that right away. There is my x-intercept. Happy times. All right, now let's find our y-intercept. If 2y equals 12, divide both sides by 2, y equals 6. All right, this is my time, you guys. I can feel it. Oh, oh my gosh. I'm seriously, this is so embarrassing. This is going on the internet. That's so embarrassing. Okay, pretend like that's a straight line going through your 2 points. So let me just really quick recap graphing. When you've got slope-intercept form, you plot your first point at your y-intercept right here, and then you apply your slope. Okay, pretty simple. Point slope, identify what your m or your slope value is, and you also need to identify a coordinate pair. Always plot your point and then apply your slope. Standard, you're going to really quick just find those x and y intercepts. Okay, remember, you can use the cover-up method to do both of these. Okay, here we go. Moving on. Now, we're going to kind of cover 2 skills in one. If I give you this graph, I want you to write an equation for it in both slope, intercept, and point slope. But something that you should know, just as a good math skill, if you don't see points already put onto your graph for you, just go put them there. Okay, that'll really help you out. Let's do slope-intercept first. So b, which is my y-intercept, is 4. And then to figure out my slope, I'm like, okay, now watch your intervals. It looks like we're going up 2, but you go up 2, 4, over 2. Well, 4 over 2 is just 2. If you don't know what I'm talking about, hold on, let me erase this so you can see it. Look at the intervals of your graph. So technically, when we go from 4 to 8, we're going up 4. And then when we go over, it's over 2. 4 over 2 is 2. Now you've got m and b. Just put them in your equation and just go on your merry way. Okay, now for point slope, we can carry down that same slope, that 2, but we just need a coordinate pair. I mean, you can use the y-intercept, you can use the other coordinate. Let's just use the y-intercept. Okay, so now when we write it in your equation, I'm going to write out the regular form first, and then I'm going to erase specific components just to show you how I plug it in. So here is just regular point slope form. Now let's erase our m and plug in our actual slope. So I took out my m and I'm going to substitute in 2. All right, so that's done. Now looking at our coordinate pair, remember this is x, this is y. I'm going to take out y1, plug in 4, take out x1 and plug in a 0. And you are done. So it doesn't really matter when you're looking at a graph. If you need to put it in both slope intercept and point slope, There's no like rhyme or reason. There's no order. I would do slope-intercept first, carry down your slope, and then plug in a coordinate pair. Okay, now out of all the slides, these are probably, I don't know, pay attention to these. Now, when we talk about equations that are parallel to lines, parallel always tells us that number one, our lines will never intersect, but they have the same slope. So if I want any equation that's parallel to y equals 4x minus 10, this is the only part that I care about. I just need to make any random equation. Who cares about the y-intercept? No, nothing. I need it to have a slope of 4. So I don't know. How about y equals 4x minus 100? Y equals 4x plus 3? Y equals 4x plus 17? I don't know. The most important part that if it's parallel, they all have the same slope of 4. If we want one that's perpendicular, though, that doesn't mean the slopes are the same. That means that the slopes are opposite reciprocals. So if my slope is 4, which is really just 4 over 1, I need a slope that flips and is the opposite. Hold on, pause right there. If I told you that I had a slope of 1/2 and I wanted a perpendicular slope, flip it, make it the opposite. So it'd be -2. Or like if I told you that I had -3 over 4 and I wanted a perpendicular slope, flip it, make it the opposite. So it'd be positive. Okay, going back. So if I want an equation that's perpendicular to this guy, I don't need a slope of 4. I need this to be my slope. And again, pick any random y-intercept. Who cares? But notice the most important part is that I've got that opposite reciprocal slope. So parallel, same. Parallel, same. You think about two parallel lines, same. Perpendicular, opposite reciprocals. Okay, now this is probably the most important slide. I'm just kidding, they're all important. But no, this one for real. Now I want an equation that's in point-slope form. All right, so let's start there. That is perpendicular. Okay, that's your clue. They're going to need to be opposite reciprocal slopes to this equation. So our -4, we're going to have to figure out the opposite reciprocal. And it's got to pass through that point. So looking at this, you need it in point slope. It's perpendicular. You're going to have to figure out the opposite reciprocal and plug in that point. So, okay, calm down. It's going to be okay. I'm just kidding. I'm the one that needs to calm down. So let's go ahead. Let's plug in our coordinate pair first. So instead of y1, my y value is 6. Now, when you plug in your x value, it's -2, but remember, when you do minus and negative, that turns into addition. Okay, this part, done. Now we need to take care of our slope. If in this equation it tells us that the slope is -4, but I want the I want a perpendicular slope. I want it to be the opposite reciprocal. Let's flip it, and if this is negative, make it positive. Look at that! That was so easy. Not bad at all. So, recap. We wanted a line in point slope, so we wrote out the whole point slope form. It had to go through this coordinate pair, so we just plugged that in for x and y. And then if it was perpendicular to that -4, you just needed to make it the opposite reciprocal. So positive 1/4. Okay, moving on. God, I wonder how long this video is already. Sorry. Also, people who are walking by here right now late at night can just tell that I'm like going crazy. I'm like, come on, it's just a review video. Okay, now we are going into our linear function conversions. Now, I always do these in a specific order, but if you go in a different order, you do you. I do not care. So we're starting in slope-intercept, and we need to change to both standard and point slope. So let's do standard first. So I know for standard, it's going to be ax plus by equals c. So I want this integer to stay. I essentially just need to move over my x term here. Here I go. And in the form, the x term comes first. So it'll be 3x plus y equals 6. Now, these are all integers, so I'm good, and it's in the correct order, so I'm done. Now, for point slope, this actually isn't too bad. All we really need is m, which I can tell from above is -3, and an xy pair. If we know that our y-intercept is 6, there we go. We can always just use that. It's so easy. So when I'm writing out my whole form, and I'm sorry if I'm annoying you by doing this, I can take out m, and let's go ahead and plug in our slope. Done. Then we'll plug in our coordinate pair. So instead of y1, I'll plug in 6. And then instead of x1, I shall plug in 0. Okay, that was example 1. Now we're starting with point slope, and we're converting to standard in slope-intercept. Let's do slope-intercept and then convert to standard. Okay, so here we are. I'm just going to rewrite it. Isn't math after hours so fun? All right, so when we're converting to slope-intercept, we first need to distribute here. So we'll have 2x plus 4. We still have y minus 1. Now, we're almost there. We just need to isolate y, which means we need to move that -1 to the other side. The opposite of a -1 is a +1. So I end with y equals 2x plus 5. And I'm good to go. So I converted it to slope-intercept. Now I'm actually going to show you a little hack. I'm going to take this equation, rewrite it over here, and I'm going to take that and just move it to standard because it's literally just one step. I just need to move my x to the other side. So my final standard form will be -2x plus y equals 5. And that's it. So when you're starting with point slope, I feel like it's easier. Change it to slope-intercept just by distributing and moving a term, and then change that to standard. Oh, sheesh. Okay, last scenario. Now we're starting with standard, and we need to convert to slope-intercept and point-slope. Let's do slope-intercept first. All right, so I'm just rewriting it for us. Now with slope-intercept, remember, I need y alone on the left side, and it cannot have a coefficient except 1, obviously. So let's start. We will move our x term to the other side. If this is negative right now, we shall add it. Okay, I did not mean to do the little cross through that. See how you have this -2y here? Please carry that down. Equals 3x plus 12. Okay, please don't just sit there and be like, oh, sweet, I'm done. I'm in slope-intercept. No, you are not. You are not in slope-intercept. Y has to be isolated. We need to divide every single piece by y, or your coefficient of y, -2. So then you've got y here. Now the good news is if you've got 3 over -2, leave it. Just leave it. We're used to that for slopes. It's okay to have fractions. But when you've got 12 divided by a -2, guess what? That's -6. Okay. All right, so I've got it in slope-intercept. Now let's use that to our advantage. So looking at this in the slope-intercept, I know that my slope is -3 over 2. I also know I have a y-intercept of -6, which means my coordinate pair will be 0, -6. Okay. Now let's just fill in our different components here. So we know that our m value is -3 over 2. Done. I know my y value is a -6, but minus a negative. That looked like the TikTok thing when people used to go like this. Turns into a positive. Please don't forget that. And then your x value here will just be a 0. And you did it. You went from standard to slope-intercept to point-slope. Okay, I'm not going to recap those slides because we would literally be here for years. Last skill is just looking at absolute value functions. Now, the graph that you're going to see on every single screen, you'll also see on your summative. This is your parent function. This is like your home base. When you see a -3, that tells you that it's either moving up or down. Well, because it's a minus, that means that you're going to be moving down 3. So watch this. Take my little vertex here, go 1, 2, 3, and then you just go on your way graphing. Let's see how bad this is. Oh, actually, this is probably my best one yet. So when you see this y equals absolute value of x minus the 3, that tells you that you're going to have a vertical shift downwards. Looking at this equation, okay, you start with your parent function, but because I see this +2, it's still a vertical shift, but it's going to be going up 2. So I'm going to take my little vertex, go 1, 2, and then I'm just going to go graph my way downtown here. Oh, that was my best one yet. Okay, so when you see a number outside of your absolute value bars, that's going to tell you it's vertical movement. When you see a number within your absolute value bars, this is when you need to think opposite. This tells you horizontal movement, left and right. Think opposite. If you see -3, that is right 3. So you're going to take this guy and go 1, 2, 3, and you are going to graph it to the right 3. Oh. Or like if I showed you y equals x minus 10, that might look like it's left 10, but absolutely not. That is right 10. Okay, and then last one, you see that your number's inside your bars, which means that you're going left or right. If it's +4, think opposite. It's left. It's left 4. So take this guy, go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you just go and graph your heart out. Oof. There you are. Okay, so at this point, you are welcome to stop the video, but I'm gonna recap everything. So please don't mind me. But if you want a really quick recap of all the skills that'll be on your assessment, please watch. If you're about to click off my video, please like, comment, subscribe. You know the drill. Okay, so here we go. Skill number 1 is looking at different equations and looking at those slope values and telling me, is it positive? Is it negative? Is it 0 or is it undefined? Remember, the quick trick is for a 0 slope, it's always going to be like a y equals, because that'll be a horizontal line. If it's going to be a vertical line, there'll be an x equals, which is always undefined. We talked about graphing in slope-intercept, in point-slope, when we just use one of the points and then applied the slope, and in standard, when we just used our cover-up method to find our x and y intercepts. We looked at a graph and we wrote an equation in slope-intercept and point-slope. Okay, for slope-intercept, we just figured out what is our y-intercept and our slope, plug it in. Point-slope, we picked any point on the line. I always say use the y-intercept, it's easy. Bring down your slope. We talked about parallel and perpendicular lines. Parallel lines that look like this never intersect, and they always have the same slope, same, parallel. If they are perpendicular, they are opposite reciprocals. So if I tell you your slope is 1/2, the opposite reciprocal would be -2. If I gave you a slope of -5/6, your opposite reciprocal is 6/5. That's perpendicular. This one I talked about for 100 years, so I'm not going to do that again. We talked about converting between the 3 forms. Now, there's no method, there's no rhyme or reason. It's just kind of you talking to yourself in your head like, okay, here's my starting point. Where do I end? Boom, boom. And lastly, we talked about absolute value functions. Now, when you've got the numbers on the outside, that tells you vertical movement. So this would be down 3, this would be up 2. When you've got your numbers inside your bars, you need to think left, right, and opposite. So if I see -3, that's really right 3. If I see +4, that's really left 4. Oh, and that is it. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe. But that is your Chapter 5 review video. Happy studying. Please message with questions. Peace.